Hello, welcome back to another one of our daily Lenten meditations. Today is Thursday, the 25th day of February. And Lent is certainly a season to think about sin and brokenness, which we have done, so that we are even more aware of God's grace, which abounds. But there's another topic that is also important to think about in Lent, and that is love, because love permeates the Bible. The Psalms are full of love, Proverbs is full of love, Isaiah and Jeremiah, two major prophets who speak of God's love for the people even after the people have broken the covenant that God has made with them. Jeremiah promises that God will establish a newer and a better covenant. Paul famously says in Corinthians that faith, hope, and love abide, but the greatest of these is love. But there's no writer in the Bible, certainly not in the New Testament, who prioritizes love as much as the one we call John. John makes love the center of all things. God is love, John says, and those who abide in God abide in love, and God abides in them. Jesus is the greatest example of love. No greater love hath a person, Jesus says, than that person will lay down his or her life for a friend. Jesus speaks of a new commandment, that we love one another as he has loved us. This commandment is the source of the name of that day in Holy Week, Maundy Thursday, which this year we will celebrate on the evening of April the 1st. The world will know that we are Jesus' disciples by the way in which we love one another. This commandment is not about affection, it's about attitude. To love one another in the community is to set the needs and desires of others ahead of our own. To love one another in community is to understand that we have different interests, different tastes, different ways of being in and experiencing the world. To love one another in community is to be aware of the ways in which we can honor one another and demonstrate the value that we have for one another, rather than simply getting what we can for ourselves. John presents us with a total picture of love, gospel style. God is love. God's love for us is unconditional, for God so loved the world that God sent his only Son, so that the world might be saved through him. As God has loved us, therefore, we should love one another. The community that bears Jesus' name must show the world that God is love, and that God's love is real in the ways in which we love one another. How crucial is this, that we learn how to value and respect each other and are willing to place another's needs ahead of our own. What an inviting community that would be to people who are tired of the me-first society. After having received God's love and shared it within the community, we take it out into the world and we share it with others. As John 21 says, as Peter and Jesus sit talking to each other, and Jesus asks Peter, "Do you love me?" And Peter says, "Yes." And Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." God so loved the world that he gave his only Son. Jesus so loved the world that he gave his own life. We so love the world that we love one another. And we give the body and the blood of Christ to one another when we celebrate the sacrament of communion in remembrance not only of him, but of his love.